أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القاعلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأحلل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله وعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to our fourth class on a discussion on foundational theology, where we are starting from scratch in this month of Ramadan and looking at the building of religion and the eventual acceptance of God through a logical, philosophical, intellectual viewpoint. And I promised you that from the beginning up until I leave you in the 15th of this month, we will do our best to, intellectually show that not only is religion a need of man, but the belief in God also is an innate need of man as well. And so, we have now discussed three different discussions altogether, all of course linked and related to each other. The first one now talked about the chain of thought and how the right triggers of thought will, of course, instigate or begin the chain of thought from fikr all the way to thought, from thought to essence, and how religion now tackles the triggers of thought in its teachings. Those things that are in our control, our friends, the media, those things, and those things that are out of our control, our family sometimes, our society where we live, all those things are out of our control. But nonetheless, it's important that we understand the impact of those things on our thoughts. That led to a discussion on the worldview and ideology, where we talked about the impact of a correct or an incorrect worldview on everything from our reason to our intellect, our thought to our knowledge, our comprehension to our actions. And then that led us to last night. And last night we talked about okay, I understand the importance of religion, the definition of religion. I get the fact how a proper worldview, and if you remember in that class, I said that a lot of the ulama that that building is on fire, I can see it. My eyes are telling me something's on fire. So now the eyes become a tool of what? Of epistemology, okay? How do you know something is cooking on the stove? I can smell it with my nose, right? How do I know, for example, there is life after death? Because in traditions and in scripture, there's mention of life after death, for example, okay? How do I know, for example, this or that? There are various tools. So the how and not the what is the study of epistemology, the theory of knowledge, okay? We want to determine tonight, of the various theories of knowledge, which one at this stage in our journey is the only one that we can use, okay? And I will repeat this phrase over and over again tonight because a lot of you might have questions. And by the way, the questions that all of you have been asking have been absolutely incredible. It really shows, number one, your openness to this whole process. I was a little bit reluctant in doing this, but I thought, you know what? I think it's a responsibility. But, the level of intelligence in the questions, you guys are tuned in, you're locked in, and I appreciate the feedback. I've been getting private feedback, et cetera, et cetera. It just shows me that, as the presenter on this side, it's very, very inspiring. It makes me want to keep going when I see, mashallah, this level of attention and this level of detail and this level of questions. May Allah bless you all, inshallah. So epistemology is the theory of knowledge. Okay? All right. Now, there are four theories that we're going to discuss today, very quickly, of course. By 6:45 Eastern, I will be done, and then that's when, I think Mutahar takes over. Okay. Let's look at the 4 different theories. Now, there may be several more, but for the sake of this discussion, we'll look at 4 of them. Okay. The first theory of knowledge, the first way that we know how we know something, is empirical. Okay. The usage of the senses, the usage of observation. Okay. What's called tajrubi, right, in Farsi. Okay. Sometimes you know what you know because you experience it, right? Tajruba we use also in Urdu as well, right? That's when you use you use your experiences, or you use your sensation, or you use your senses to understand, right? The example I gave was fire. How do you know it's on fire? Well, my eyes tell me. How do I know that the pakoras are frying? Oh man, too close to iftar, right? Close to frying pakoras, I can smell the besan, I can smell the right? The acquisition or assessment of knowledge based on practical or observable first-hand experience rather than theoretical explanation. Okay, you can sit there and you can tell your child all about the theory of the sun rising and explain how beautiful it is, or you can show them at sunrise how beautiful the sky is at sunrise, or at sunset for that matter, right? That's empirical knowledge. That's called sensationalism. The idea of using our senses to know whether or not this water is cold, or that sound is loud, or that fire is burning, or that meal is cooking, or et cetera, et cetera. You get the point, right? How do I know this food is spicy? I tasted it. My taste buds right now are on fire. That's how I know, right? That this is spicy. So that's one theory of knowledge. Remember, we're trying to establish which knowledge, or which theory of knowledge rather, is best used to investigate our worldview. The question that I'm going to leave with you time and time again is, of the 2 worldviews that we talked about, the temporal and the celestial, or the divine, which one of them is the one that we have to follow? It can't be both, guys. It's impossible. That's the first theory of knowledge. The second theory of knowledge is traditional, naqli. Naqli here is the Arabic naqli, not the Urdu naqli. Naqli in Urdu means fake, right? Naqli means from naqal. Naqal means to transmit something, right? To narrate something. Okay, I know something because it's in narrations. I know something because it's in scripture. Okay, the assessment of knowledge has based on transmitting of text or scripture. How do I know that there was 124,000 prophets? Because we have a clear hadith on them. On that, have I met them all? No. Do I know their names? No, I don't. The only way I know that there's that many prophets, because there is a sound tradition in text on it. Okay, that's it. No, I haven't seen them. I haven't met them. I don't know their names. I have no idea. But one of the ways is traditional. Okay, it's clear in hadith that this exists, so that exists. All right. Number 3 is mystical, right? Shahudi. Okay, we witness something, right? Either in our dreams, or we have a moment where we witness something, we see something, right? Sometimes people see things that other people can't see. Sometimes they see dreams that other people can't see, right? So, for example, how do I know there's a God? I saw a dream where I met God in the day of judgment. And you woke up thinking, okay, there has to be a God because I saw him in a dream. Okay, I witnessed it. Okay, how do I know that, for example, my marhumin are okay? They came in my dream and they told me, you know what, I'm fine. And they look great. They're wearing white. They look very young, mashallah, fresh. Alhamdulillah, there's nur coming from their face, light coming, right? So that is the 3rd type. The 4th one is intellectual or rational, aqli. Okay, where now it's based on reason and rationale. Okay, things simply now make sense to the reason. Okay, it makes sense, for example, that if you want to raise your child to be a loving child, you have to show them love in your home. If you want your child to love God, you have to present a God of love, right? It's reasonable, rational to say that, if you're going to leave the house when it's freezing cold in New Jersey, and you leave your house in a t-shirt, it's reasonable to say you're going to catch cold. Okay. You don't need someone to come in, and either say, look, I wore the exact same outfit and I caught cold, or there's a hadith that says if you wear a t-shirt in the cold, you're gonna get sick, or that you saw in a dream some man walking around the streets of New Jersey now, in their cold winters in a t-shirt, and no, your logic tells you that, right? God's made you an aqil human being. You have the gift of the intellect. We have to use that, okay? So these are 4 theories of knowledge, okay? Now, of these 4, we have to figure out. Now, by the way, all 4 of these are absolutely accepted. All right, they exist. They are true sciences. They are, we are not to reject any of them. This is not a rejection or acceptance discussion. This is for the purpose of the journey that we're at right now. Remember, where are we going? We're trying to figure out at the fork in the road, which worldview should I follow? Okay. Now you might think, what if I don't want to follow any worldview? So what if I just want to be? And again, there are innate needs that you are unfulfilling that eventually now will scream at you to be fulfilled. Okay? One day, someday, inshallah, I'll have an entire class on the fitrat, the power of the fitrat. Okay? The fitrat, the innate nature of man, never truly turns off. There's no on or off switch. But I want you to look at it through as a dimmer. Okay, you can dim the light to a very low light. You can actually dim the light to be a very bright light, but the light will always be on, right? You can cover your fitrat all you want, your innate nature, but just because it's behind 10 veils doesn't mean it's not there. It's there. The veils have to be removed. Okay, so for the purpose of where we are now, think about where we are right now. We're just trying to figure out now, okay, which one of these worldviews is accurate? Which of these 4, right? Is the one that we need to use to accomplish our present goal. Okay, because now if someone else is at a different place in their journey, these these 4 will be used for a different meaning. But for our purpose right now, in the beginning of building our base, which one of these 4 is there? Let's go ahead and analyze each one carefully to see which one is the accurate one. Okay. So number 1, the empirical methods. These do not provide a worldview as they do not have the scope to speak about the fundamental issues. Okay? The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Okay? If we are depending on our senses and our sensations now to come to some conclusion that this worldview is accurate, understand the senses are limited. Sensations are limited, okay? Not only are they limited, they're prone for error. The margin of error is quite high, okay? What's spicy for one person is not spicy for another. What's cold for one person is not cold for the other. If forget other people, even you yourself, you sit in a sauna, in a whirlpool, and so in a jacuzzi, let's say, for a while, in the hot bubbles and the jets and all that, and you're in there for a good half an hour, 45 minutes, your body will adjust to that temperature, right? After a while now, you're in there for 45 minutes, then you jump into the pool. That pool will seem very, very cold to you, colder than what it actually is. So if someone was to ask you at that moment that, is the water cold? Yeah, and then it's freezing. But that actually is wrong. It's not freezing. It's at room temperature. It's freezing for you because you're coming from a whirlpool. Okay. Sometimes we think not only that, but each sense of ours has its own limitations. The eyes cannot hear, the ears cannot see, the tongue cannot, for example, feel, touch cannot see. So within each sense, there are actual evidences that exist that is beyond the capacity. So, for example, if something has to be heard, the eyes will say, "Look, I can't hear it." And because I can't hear it, it doesn't exist. No, that's not accurate, right? You're looking for something. Let's say, for example, in the sky, right? Let's say, for example, you're looking for the moon for the new month, and I don't want any questions about moon sighting, please. Let's say, for example, you're looking for the moon. Now you ask the ears, can you see the moon? No, I can't see the moon. So therefore, there is no moon in the sky. I mean, these are silly examples, but sometimes we think the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. But just because you can't hear something, Mr. I, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. You don't have the capacity to hear it, or you don't have the tools to see it. Okay? So limitations of sensationalism cancels out empirical knowledge to be right now at our phase, at our stage, to be used to provide a correct worldview. Remember, empirical knowledge is absolutely essential. It's important, but not at this stage in our game. If we establish that, okay, this is the proper worldview, and then, this is the tools for it, at that moment, empirical knowledge then is used to further that belief, but not to build the base. To build on the base, yes. It could be floor number 5 in my building, but it's not the base of my building. I hope that makes sense to you. Once that base is concrete and settled, then you can build floors on empirical knowledge all you want. And I'll come back to that later on in our classes, inshallah. It'll make sense to you. So that's number 1. So empirical knowledge, I'm sorry, you're out. Number 2, traditional method. You would think, wait a second, I believe in a worldview because I have hadiths from the imams. I have verses from the Quran. I have, this ulama and that ulama telling me this, telling me that. And I would say respectfully that also cannot be used to provide a proper worldview. Okay? Because this is what's called circular logic. I believe in Allah because the Quran says so. I believe in the Quran because Allah says so. I believe in the Holy Prophet because God says so. I believe in God because the Prophet says so, right? I believe that, A is true and A tells me that I am true. So it's just one circle. Nobody's proving anything. They're all existing within their own web and their own cocoon. There has to be an external element, an external factor that comes in and proves both of them right. And then both of them together now strengthen that initial belief. But the initial belief has to come from outside the circle. Okay? So, for example, I believe that this hadith about Islam is correct. Okay, who told you that this hadith is correct? Well, Islam did. Well, wait a second. How can that prove Islam? And Islam proves, doesn't make sense, right? It's like, the famous joke that, it's time for Hajj, right? It's time for Hajj. And, Hajj season is over, and, you don't go to Hajj and I don't go for Hajj. Okay? But let's wherever we go, make sure that, we tell whoever's listening that we both went for Hajj. So you call yourself Haji Asad, I'll call myself Haji Asad. Okay, fine. Right? And then we're at someone's house and say, oh, okay, Haji, oh, you guys went for, yeah, he went for Hajj. And when you ask him, he'll say, I went for Hajj. But none of us went for Hajj, right? So this circular logic is actually rejected even in today's Western philosophy. It's called dor, okay? And that dor is simply isn't accepted. Now, mind you, traditional knowledge, ahadiths and verses, of course, absolutely are used. But once you identify Allah and God and the proper worldview, if you do, I'm assuming you guys all will. Some of you may not accept what I'm saying in these 15, and that's okay. I've done my part. Now it's up to you to find tawfiq, inshallah, to find your own path. But if after all of this now you say, okay, you know what, I'm sold on Sayyid Asad's content, it's not my comment, but my presentation, then fine. Now every verse you recite is meant, again, to build on that. Okay? It's not meant to be a base. I'm sorry. Okay, so we can't say that I believe in something because someone else told me to. It has to come from another source. Okay, so right now, for our journey right now, okay, this traditional method of knowledge, or naqli, right now cannot work. Okay, it doesn't prove anything. I'm sorry, it does not prove anything. We're trying to build the base of the building. We're not trying to build floor number 13 in my condominium. We're trying to build the base. Okay? Number 3 is mystical methods. Okay? Mystical methods. Where, again, the idea that, somebody saw something, they witnessed something that was only specific to them, and that they are now sold on the idea that this worldview exists. Okay. First of all, seeing anything in a dream, let's say, for example, or in a different state, for example, maybe even hallucinations. Sometimes we might see things, right? That's more of a symbolic experience than an actual real one. Okay. For example, trying to explain to your family the dream you saw. Okay, you wake up one morning, you have a very vivid dream. You can't wait to tell your family you saw somebody's very special in your dream, or you saw, let's say, for example, your marhumin or someone that is very close to you, blah blah blah, or maybe you saw yourself in your dream at some special place. You wake up, you try to describe that dream, you're bound to leave out details. Okay, someone says, oh, what were you wearing in the dream? I think I was wearing a blue shirt. I think I was wearing my abaya. I think I was wearing my my kurta. I'm not sure, was it white? It might have been white. Now all of a sudden, there's a lot of there's a lot of misunderstandings that might come about. Secondly, for you now to be able to somehow capture what you witnessed and describe that in words, you're bound to now lose something in the process. Okay, so also how that person tells you, like, for example, I've had many people call me and tell me, I've seen this dream and that, and I have no idea about dream analysis. I never read one book on it. They don't teach it to you in the Hausa. I don't have this idea of how to look at khobs and dreams. Otherwise you might ask me, I saw this snake, or I saw this tree, or I don't know any of that stuff. Let's say, for example, that a person tells me about their dream and they take it to mean A. Meanwhile, after hearing the dream, I think that's not what it means at all. It just means that you saw this. So now one dream equals two different outcomes and two different understandings. There's a lot of misunderstanding there, a lot of details that simply are forgotten, right? On top of that, you could have a vivid dream and only wake up an hour later to forget everything about that dream. Okay? You're not able to correctly capture the details, let alone make it a concrete belief. Okay? So the mystical methods are not there. The mystical, the Shahudi way of the theory of knowledge is not there. Does that mean that people don't see, Nurani people and people who are illuminated in their dreams, and that's not true? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, again, for the third time now, because I'm bound to get questions, for the purpose of where we are right now in our journey, this theory of knowledge cannot be used. Prone for error, prone for a lack of detail, you're bound to miss some things, you're bound to create misunderstandings inside the person who's listening to you. Now, if you expect to use that as a worldview, again, going back to that very important class number 2, how much of an effect does a worldview have on us? Then obviously you want to be solid, concrete, and completely detailed in ensuring that this is what I want to use for a worldview. And that leaves us, of course, for the fourth one. Okay? And the fourth one is that the only comprehensive, independent, and accessible method for arriving at a true worldview is provided by logic and rational thought. Okay? It has to make sense to you at a 2 + 2 = 4 concept. It has to make sense to you that salt is salty and the sun is hot and the sky is blue, and irrefutable knowledge, right? To the point where it just makes sense to me logically. And once that's established, now I'm going to make this point here, and then the floor will be open for questions in about 5 minutes, right? I'm already at 40 now. Okay. Once that's established, once you've identified this is the proper worldview in my intellect, in my aql, in my rationale, in my reasoning, then whatever that worldview now commands, I accept. This is a crucial point in our discussion for my young guys who claim that my elders now simply follow the deen blindly or follow their respective belief blindly, and they kind of dismiss the belief of our elders, right? I've had too many young guys today, tell me that you want me to follow my parents, or you want me to. I mean, they have no idea what they're doing. They're simply just following like robots, whatever they were told since they were kids. They never question. And no, don't simply dismiss someone's belief. They, in their own intellectual way, understand that what I believe in makes sense to me. Okay. Now they may not be able to explain to you, why do I have to pray this way? Why one rakat? Why one ruku and two sujood? Why two rakat in fajr and four rakat in zuhr, for example? But all they know is that it's been made an obligation from God. God makes sense to me intellectually, and so I submit. So that's not blind faith. Okay. This is where I need to stop and remind you guys that once this is built on the basis of of logic and the intellect, whatever comes down from that worldview, we accept and we submit to, whether we know it or not, understand it or not, whether or not we can explain it or not, is not relevant at that moment. We've identified this is the worldview that I want to submit to. I've submitted to it, and submission is that ala kulli hal, in all states, all situations, I'm going to submit to these people, this worldview, right? At that moment now, yes, you can discuss, we can debate, but ultimately there comes a moment now where we submit. A lot of things inside the Quran, verses in the Quran, fiqhi rulings sometimes that today's youth don't understand, and somehow they don't agree with. And some of them quietly kind of follow it, saying, okay, I don't get it, but I have to do it. And some of them rebel and say, I refuse to do it. I refuse to wear socks in front of non-mahram men. I refuse to do all these things because it doesn't make sense to me, right? I refuse to, I don't know, I refuse to fast and damage myself and hurt myself and put myself through all this difficulty of no food, no water, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't make sense to me. What does God want? Why does he want us to starve ourselves? And so that's where this idea is that you have to revisit that and, understand that I may not know everything and all the logic and the reasoning and the wisdom behind certain things, certain verses, blah, blah, blah. But I do know and have accepted this worldview to be the correct one. And I also know that not everything I will know. Please understand that. We won't know everything. That's an unlimited wisdom that we're trying to understand. Okay? But it has to start off on the basis of logic and rational thought. Okay? So, guys, as a recap of today's class, we're moving slowly along. Okay? We've now understood what religion actually means, where it fits in everyday life, the triggers of the thought. We understand the impact that a correct or incorrect worldview, bracket religion, has on my life. It affects my reason, affects my thought, affects my comprehension, affects my day-to-day action. Okay? I want you to picture a typical day in the life of an atheist and a typical day in the life of a Orthodox Christian. Okay? And tell me that their entire day is not controlled and steered by their worldview. Absolutely it is. And then the idea that now we've understood that, fine, let's give worldview and religion a chance. Let's bring him in. Let's put him in front of us. Go ahead and you present your spiel. And we said last night that, you know what, we'll accept the fact that let's investigate. How do we investigate now? We don't use our senses. We don't use verses and scriptures. We don't use what we see. One person's cloud in the sky could be a rabbit. One guy could be a fox. Okay. We use intellect, rational, and logical discussions. And from this point now moving forward, we get into some real, true, deep, logical discussions. Then now we begin to pave the road towards, we're getting close now. Okay, we're getting real close now. In a matter of 3 nights now, you'll be able to understand which worldview is the right worldview. But all of these tools now have to be there, right? My wife and I, before the month of Ramadan, we started. We're not really, DIY people. We're not do-it-yourself at home projects. We thought, you know what? Let's put up some floating shelves. Okay. So we said, okay, let's do it. So we researched what tools do we need, blah blah blah. So we spent about 2 days, 3 days getting all the measurements, getting all the tools now, getting all the material. The wood is there, the drill is there, the stud finder is there, the screwdrivers are there, everything, all the nails are there. We got our wood cut at a local store, blah, blah, blah. And at one moment now, the kids were at school and we began. And we cleared out the living room and we put all the material now in front of us. The wood was there, the tools are there, everything was there. But not one shelf was up. But we have all the right tools. Right now, what we're doing is we're gathering all the right tools and all the equipment we need. When the time is right, then we'll drill a hole, we'll hammer the nails, we'll put the shelf up, but not yet. Give me a couple more days with all of you, inshallah, we'll get there, okay? So that's our discussion for today, inshallah. Any questions, as always, please? I am open, inshallah, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How are you?
How are you? Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much. So we have a few questions for tonight.
Beautiful.
The first question we have here is, you talked about the traditional, that method that does not give you the worldview. So, but most of the teachings that we follow is based on traditions we do. So how do we clarify that?
So if you're talking about like fiqhi rulings and those kind of things, that's fine. But those traditions now have to make sense to you only when the base of God intellectually makes sense. If there are traditions that bring you to intellectual understanding, then that's fine. But we, again, like I said, that circular logic can't be there. Okay, it has to be the case, and this is sometimes. As much of a privilege as it is to be born in a Muslim family, if we truly want to seek the truth and what the true religion is, sometimes I think that we have to kind of release ourselves from our cocoon and start fresh and move from an inherited religion to one that actually makes sense to us. Okay, so I understand a lot of what we understand is tradition, but how do we accept that tradition based on our logic and intellect? Okay, and I knew that I'd get questions about specifically that traditional epistemology, and that's fine. But the absorbing of those traditions only comes, proper absorption only comes when you have an intellectual base of God inside of you.
Okay. So this question we have here is, do prophets get mystical dreams? What about the dreams seen by the Pharaoh, which Hazrat Yusuf interpreted?
Yeah, so I'm not denying dreams, right? This is, remember, I'm talking about our stage right now where we're at. We're trying to figure out the proper worldview, okay? Dreams cannot be used to prove that, yes, I must follow that worldview. Can prophets see dreams? Of course they can. Nabi Ibrahim saw a very vivid dream, right? The analysis of the dream of, Nabi Yusuf was granted this beautiful knowledge of the interpretation of dreams. And that's partly what got him out of prison, right? So yeah, it's a real science, absolutely. But right now we're trying to build the building, guys. We're trying to lay a foundation down, right? We don't lay a foundation of a worldview based on dreams, right? There's too much margin of error and there's too much misunderstanding at that moment. Do dreams exist? Yes, yeah. And does God sometimes send messages through dreams? Yes, he does. To prophets, of course he does. Absolutely. There are countless examples of prophets seeing dreams and acting upon those dreams, for sure. Yes. If that's a question, yeah, prophets can see dreams, yes.
In the same line, the dreams that we saw, not the prophet, us human beings, those dreams, we cannot take it as any kind of evidence, right?
Right now, no, Mutaharbai. Right now, we are trying to build the base. Now, once that base, let me make one point clear, and I can tell by the questions that it wasn't clear. The 4 theories of knowledge I just presented, right? Tajrubi, Naqli, Shahudi, Aqli. These 4, right? Empirical, traditional, mystic, and intellectual. These 4 are absolutely accepted theories of knowledge, even inside of Islam. If I could put on my Muslim hat right now, even within Islam, absolutely. Where to apply each knowledge depends on what level we're at. If the building has already been built, and the foundation is laid, and the basement is made, and the base is strong, then yes, absolutely. Allah says, travel the world and open up your eyes and look at the signs of Allah. Allah is saying, yes, use your senses but use your senses to strengthen an already existing belief. Don't use your senses to create that belief. If you see a dream, let's say, many people claim that I saw Imam Ali in my dream. I saw myself in Karbala. That's a beautiful dream. But those dreams cannot be used to make the basis of our religion, right? We have a hadith that says, if you're good with your family, Allah will give you this much reward. So I end up being good with my family. That's great. MashaAllah, that's great. But again, we can't use that to build our base. Later on, once we identify the proper worldview, all of these different theories now not only can be used, but have to be used to strengthen that base. Hope that makes sense to all of you.
That makes sense. So this is a question from our youth here. What is sensationalism?
The idea of using your senses, okay, to come to a conclusion, okay? And there are some people that say, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. If you can't taste it, it doesn't exist, right? So putting everything on the shoulders of your senses. And the idea is that our senses are fallible. Our senses can make mistakes. Our senses are limited. Like I said, the eyes can't hear, the ears can't see, right? So now you're asking the eyes to understand a powerful entity like the worldview, when a lot of what happens in the world, it simply can't fathom and can't understand because it's limited. Right? If it says, oh, the sound of the wind doesn't exist, the sound of a barking dog doesn't exist, the sound of, I don't know, boiling water doesn't exist, you'll say, you're wrong, eyes. You can't hear. That's why you're saying it doesn't exist. That's why the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, right? Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right?
That makes sense. This question, I think, might be for your future lectures, but let me just ask, because since they asked this, Allah has guided us with Tawheed in our nature, fitrat. What is it? What does that mean?
I don't understand. I think yes. So we claim that the idea of believing in God. Yeah, go ahead.
In oneness of God is in our fitrat.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you explain that?
One discussion that we will have, that I have to have before I leave you guys, is that why does it have to be one God? Why can't it be multiple gods? Why can't there be the God of the East and the West, right? Yes, so that's partly why last night in our discussion on the drive to investigate religion, the very first element that drives us is our fitrat, is our innate nature. And if you remember the three of them, right? The need for the truth, the need for good, and the need to worship. That's called the God gene, Gene. Okay, Google it. Every human being has a God gene inside of it. Okay, so we believe that absolutely you were born. Every human being was born to worship something, to point towards God. And this will make more sense tomorrow and the next day, of course, as I'm getting closer and closer to identifying in the big reveal which worldview intellectually now makes complete sense. But before that, as a little bit of a spoiler alert, there is an absolutely innate need for us to believe in something, and it has to coincide with our innate nature, meaning those things that we are looking for. Okay, and so yes, yeah. I mean, if you're asking me, is there something innate to believe in one God? Yes, there is. It's called the God gene. And how do we prove that? We prove that by saying what I said last night, that all throughout history, there's always been worship done. People have, traveled the mountains looking for this God that is inside of them. And they've incorrectly now, of course, identified God to be the sun, the moon, fire, water, Fir'aun, whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't mean that innate need is not there. It is there. It may not get fulfilled, but it is there for sure. Now you'll ask me, what about the atheist? Again, I'll go back to what I said today. The fitra dims, right? It diminishes and it exaggerates, right? So when it's diminishing, the light is on, but it's a very, very low light. As opposed to, and when it's a low light, you can't see things that are in front of you. When the dim is absolutely on its max and the light is at the highest, then you start to see things, right? So the light is there even in an atheist that's there, but the veils have been covered by that light. The veil of ignorance, the veil of sin, the veil of the ego, the veil of individualism, the veil of trauma, the veil of abuse, whatever you want to call it, right? those who deny God, some of them deny God because they've come from a childhood where God's been presented as an evil God, a vicious God, a God to be feared, a God that will only punish you, right? Those are veils. And the more you remove the veil, the more that you'll end up seeing the light, right? It's like saying, sorry. It's like saying you're sitting in a room, it's 2:00 in the afternoon right now, and you've put up these thick curtains in front of your windows, and you're sitting in complete darkness, and then you claim the sun doesn't exist. No, it does exist. Remove the curtains and you'll see how bright the sun is, right? You have veiled the sun from yourself. The sun is there, but you have now put those veils there, inshallah. I hope that makes sense.
One last question, 4 minutes left here. So the prophets and imams have ilm-e-ladunni. Did their level of yaqeen came on that basis, and we don't have it? So how can we achieve that level of yaqeen? Or it is not possible for ordinary person to achieve it?
So ilm-e-ladunni is not possible for us. It is a gift from Allah given to the imams and the prophets. Okay, it is when Imam Ali stands there saying saluni, ask me, that's a man who has ilm-e-ladunni. Ladunni is this special khas ilm of the heavens and the earth that is given to the imams. Did they use that for yaqeen? No, they were gifted that because of their yaqeen, if that makes sense to all of you, right? Otherwise, if it's the other way around, that God, randomly gave, let's say, for example, Hussein ibn Ali salam, this ilm, and because of that he made an imam, then I have a shikayat, I have a complaint with God. That God, how come you didn't give me that imamat? How come I wasn't made a prophet, right? How come you randomly chose these 12 individuals? And we also know that God exists on a merit basis. Okay, he only rewards us based on what we do. And I say this sometimes and it gets me in a lot of trouble, but sometimes it's no one's going to ask you in your grave, are you a Sayyid or not Sayyid? What's your last name? Who was your father? This and that. They'll ask you, what did you do in this world? And based on what you did in this world, you'll be given a reward. Okay, so the idea here is that ilm-e-ladunni is khas for the imams, but they earned that through their yaqeen. Now, our yaqeen can be achieved, but there are levels of yaqeen. Again, I'll go back to the dimmer, right? So ours can be a very, very low dim. There's light there. It's still light, but it's just not as high, whereas the imams are on a full max. Okay, so our yaqeen is still there. It may not be at the level of the imams. That's why we constantly ask for yaqeen to be fortified and strengthened and elevated, right? And travel within the different levels of yaqeen. Yaqeen is not black and white. It's not on or off, right? It's higher, it's lower, it's on a vertical plane traveling up towards a very high level. Hope that makes sense, inshallah.
So it's more of an effort we're making than where we are.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mona. Perfect timing, 7:00 now. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow at 6.
Inshallah, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.